It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. The show is brought to you by Audible.com. You go to audibletrial.com/Opperman Report. Get yourself a free audiobook. Okay. One of the things I want to ask you about, okay, is we're talking about Sandy Hook and Boston bombing, and that these are totally staged events, right?
Well, I think most of us have concluded that they certainly weren't. They didn't happen the way that we were told they were happened by the mainstream media.
What do you think about the moon landing?
Well, I didn't go into that in my book, and that's another divisive subject. I have serious doubts about that as well. I mean, I would suggest that the best place for that, and what I found the most persuasive information that was a hoax, was on it's a site, Dave McGowan. I don't know if you've heard of him.
I love
Laurel Canyon.
Yeah, Dave's on my show all the time.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. I mean, well, if you're familiar with, I forget what he called it, but I was overwhelmed by what he came up with Apollo there. I mean, it's just, again, you're looking way down that rabbit hole, and do people really want to face the ramifications of that? And if it was a hoax, it's kind of like the TWA Flight 800 thing. How they would? I mean, that's such a matter of national pride. Not only would the officials be so reluctant. I mean, we saw Capricorn 1, the movies, by the way, which O.J. Simpson
with O.J., yeah,
years ago, 1978, I think. And I think they portrayed it pretty realistically about what would happen if they did stage something and they went against it. So I didn't go into that in my book because again, it's more of a real esoteric issue, but I think clearly there are lots of. I'm very impressed by the fact that Gus Grissom, and the other two astronauts died in that mysterious fire, and that he had been a critic, and he was scheduled to be the first man on the moon, not Neil Armstrong. And I believe one of his last statements was that, how are we going to get to the moon? We can't even communicate between the rocket and the tower or something on the launch pad there.
Yeah, between two buildings. Yeah.
And his own family has I believe they've directly accused NASA of killing him.
Yeah, his son.
That's a story that cries out for the mainstream media. Where's 60 Minutes with that? But you had to wait for that Fox special a few years ago. I didn't even know about it. I said, "Wow, Gus Grissom's family's accusing NASA of that. How is that not news?"
Well, at the time it was news, and I've tried to get his son. On this show, and you can't find him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of these people too. When you want to get down to the bottom of these stories, you can't find the people.
Yeah, I know. Well, there's still a lot of fear too. I mean, there's when I was talking to, I tracked down Seymour Weitzman, who was one of the more interesting cops in Dealey Plaza when Kennedy was assassinated. He was at all the scenes, and one of the most interesting things about the House Assassinations Committee is that they did track him down to a mental institution, and years later, and he supposedly had gone off his rocker talking about what a big conspiracy it was and so forth. He didn't have any kids. People have never been able to track down his family. I tracked down his nephew, and I talked to him, had a brief conversation on the phone, and all he kept doing was shouting, "I don't know anything. I don't know anything." 50 years later, I really didn't even get a chance to ask him anything. Yeah. He just said, but that's, that kind of, it's still there, and I don't know. I guess, I understand that, I guess, on some level, but I can see why you can't find certain people, but I would think you'd be able to find Grisham's son because he did appear on that Fox special.
Yeah, I know, but it's very, and I find people for a living. I locate people for a living. I do it like as a routine. Yeah. So it's tough to find some of these people. Now, what about? Have you looked into? By the way, I was talking about it today. I was debating about it today. That Ariel Castro case in Cleveland with the 3 girls who he kidnapped. And
yeah.
Have you looked into that?
Yeah, I remember when that came out. It didn't get as. I mean, I didn't pay that much attention to this, but I don't have it in my mind that there was all the videos done about it. But yeah, it had a lot of the elements that some of these other Boston bombing and Sandy Hook have, where the witnesses were kind of. I mean, the neighbor, if you remember, the black neighbor that was a little over the top.
Charles Ramsey.
They were talking to, and I just remember hearing that they had supposedly that a neighbor had reported seeing the naked girls chained like dogs and walking around the backyard. I mean, I don't remember that much about it, so I really probably shouldn't be talking about it, but I do remember that there were enough holes in it again for me to say, okay, it's, and to the point, Ed, sometimes where I get so cynical where if it's widely reported in the mainstream media, I just assume it's not true. Because it's just, I say, okay, if they're reporting on it, it's either fake or it's certainly distorted anyhow. So that's kind of what I thought about that. I looked at it enough, and I thought, I know this is a typical dramatic story with these girls, where I'm certainly an awful thing if they were kept there all those years. But there's always just so many inconsistencies and illogic, to these things that I don't pay that much attention to them.
You don't know me, but I've been involved in a lot of these big stories. I was involved in the Tiger Woods story. I did all the cell phone forensics on the Tiger Woods case with all the 15. Oh. Yeah. And then I did the Charlie Sheen case. I was involved in that. My client was Capri Anderson. I was involved in even the Zimmerman case, So I've been involved in these 24-hour news stories. And I think they're real, but a lot of stuff that comes out as a private investigator, a lot of stuff that comes out in the morning, okay, Ed, we're going to be doing it. Oh, we got this great information that's coming out. We're going to take this person down. They're going to polygraph it. Whatever. And by the end of the day, it's totally squashed and silenced. A flip is switched. A switch is flipped, and it's just shut off. They don't go down that road. Now, with the Ariel Castro, there's a lot of stuff in that case, man. It has never made the light of day, man. Incredible stuff. His daughter, Ariel Castro's daughter, at 19 years old, stabbed her own child and is in prison for 25 years.
I believe I heard that.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. No one's heard any of that stuff.
I've like I said, obviously you have a lot more experience in the area than I do, but I just usually, like I said, as a rule of thumb, I usually go to the internet and see what the kids that are living in their parents' basements are saying. I find them to be more accurate or more interesting anyhow.
Now, what do you think about the Boston bombing and Sandy Hook? So you're the opinion of that these things are totally staged events?
Well, I mean, again, I hesitate to say that because the problem, especially with Sandy Hook, is that you get into all those parents, and being a parent myself, I can understand the feelings there. But certainly, I found some curious reactions among them. But I don't even think you have to go there to understand that the story didn't make much sense of this kid with Asperger's that barely weighed 100 pounds, and all the ammunition he supposedly had on the security video. They had the new security system, and somehow they had no tape of him entering. There were inconsistent stories about how he entered. You had the curious bullet hole that was in the car that appeared to be shot from the inside, who was one of the substitute teachers that was killed. And, of course, the most, really, the rabbit hole feature of them all is and I don't really go beyond that, but I used to show people there was footage that day, helicopter footage.
Right.
And it appears for all the world that nothing's going on. I mean, I don't see any chaos. I don't see any people. I mean, looking at it, it just looks like another day at the office. I mean, I don't see what you would expect to see, pandemonium. So it's one of those things where it cries out for real investigation, but there was a local reporter that's in my area that happened to have been the one that investigated the nurse, that interviewed the nurse at the school, and she was one of the most curious witnesses because she had originally said that Lonza's mother was a kindergarten teacher there, and that everyone knew her, and she was a well-loved and well-respected kindergarten teacher, and they knew the boy. So she reported that breathlessly on air. It was a big story. So, of course, later, subsequently, they claimed that Lonza never went to the school and that his mother was totally unconnected to the school. So how do you make a mistake like that? So I just emailed her. I didn't, say anything about conspiracy, and I just asked her about that, and she wrote back it was a mistake, and she said, there was no conspiracy. And that's the way these establishment reporters think. Even when you don't bring it up, they can tell by what you're questioning, because you're asking a real journalistic question. Why did she say and describe in some detail how beloved, and respected this person was, when it subsequently turns out that she wasn't connected to the school? I mean, that's a Lois Lane type question. I mean, a real reporter is going to ask that, but they're trained, and I don't think anybody has to tell them not, I think they're just trained to turn off their powers of speculation. Oh, no, there was no conspiracy, and that was her word to me. And okay, that's the final word on the subject. So that's, I hesitate again to stay there. Yeah, they were fake and all that kind of stuff, and I know all the theories, and I know all that's been written, and a lot of it's compelling. But I just prefer again to say that in both cases, I don't believe the official stories make any sense, and the journalists again that are paid a lot of money to do so didn't act very honorably again, and didn't do themselves justice on these cases either.
I found that a lot of these journalists, who we think that, hey, why aren't they investigating this? Like I'm thinking of one guy. I had him as a guest on my show. I don't want to mention his name to hurt his feelings. He's a nice guy. I like him, But and he was a producer for a big show on HLN, big show on Discovery Channel, all this true crime stuff. And I talked to this guy, and he says, when I get on an airplane, I look around to see any Arab faces, to see if they're going to hijack the plane.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a guy. He's working in media, man. This guy's a good job. Makes more money than I do. I tell you that right now.
Yeah.
Way more exposure than influence. Big case, Drew Peterson case. Big cases. Big stories.
Yeah, they're conditioned. I mean, they're conditioned to think that.
Yeah, and he just buys into it, man.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So how is that? What is going on with that? How is that? They're dumb and we're not?
I think we're conditioned with everything. I mean, it's just, we're going to, people are going to think that because that's what they, with this war against terror, everybody, you're not really sure. That guy's named Muhammad. Okay. I worked with a guy named Muhammad at the time of 9/11, and he seriously, he's talking about, what can I change my name to?
Yeah.
He's terrified. And he kept going around. He kept trying to become a super patriot, and USA, and it's okay, man. Nobody's coming after you here, but that's what happens. Is when you have a group that's been vilified like that, and again, I think it's unfair, and they're certainly not the only group that's been treated that way. But right now, they're feeling the brunt of being stereotyped, because it's, again, everyone thinks that these cells are everywhere, and I just, I don't know, maybe they are, but like I said, again, I'm much more fearful of government intrusion on my rights than I am with the terrorists doing anything.
Yeah. Now with Boston bombing, like you said, man, they got this trial, they got this kid on trial, his uncle is obviously Ruslan. You familiar with him?
Yeah. Well, I think the most important thing about the Boston bombing is that not only, again, leaving aside the videos that kind of lead you down that rabbit hole, but what happened when they were searching for the alleged suspects, the fact that you talk about illegal, unconstitutional checkpoints. They locked down an entire city, put it on martial law. You had tanks rolling in the street. And you can see the videos of the armed, militarized police, banging on doors, ordering citizens out. It should have disturbed everyone. It didn't. People accepted it way too easily, and they cheered.
They cheered
and they didn't even catch the guy. I mean, who I don't think did it anyhow, but they didn't even catch him. A neighbor had to send a tip, and then they shot the boat like 500 times or something. I mean, typical overkill. One kid they shut down an entire city for, and that, to me, that just was such a sad commentary on. And again, I know I'm talking big. I mean, I don't, and I probably, maybe they were citizens that felt the same way as me there and said, well, I can't step out because my neighbors won't back me up. I don't want to be shot by the police. So I might be unfair and criticizing there, but what I know I would have done if I had been an official from that area, if I had been a congressman or something, or mayor, I would have spoken out and said, this is reprehensible. This doesn't look like America. I have tanks rolling in the street, and we're seeing more of that it's America in many ways is becoming a third world country. We're seeing that, that kind of thing, which you couldn't have pictured that 50 years ago with tanks rolling down an American street. That's the kind of pictures you saw in communist countries. We couldn't conceive of our own military being turned on us like that.
Yeah, so true. Just imagine that happening during Ronald Reagan or Jimmy Carter. We would have had a heart attack.
Yeah, because I mean, probably more people. But I think that's why you have so many people believing in gradualism and incremental. These are incremental, bit by bit, chipping away at civil liberties and freedoms, and that's what's happened. Unconstitutional checkpoints turn into the NDAA, and eventually turn into martial law in a major American city. I mean, so they've set the precedent. And it's almost like a legal precedent where they'll cite precedent. Next, maybe they'll shut down New York next time. And it's if they're searching for an alleged, you're doing for your own safety. And when you talk about gun grab, it's the same kind of thing. They appeal to people's emotions. Well, we're doing it for your own safety. Or, the favorites for the children. Everything's for the children.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like, well, we have to protect the children. Oh, okay, all right. Yeah.
Well, now, but the thing is, if they can totally, I'm with Dave McGowan on this thing, especially if you've heard his stuff lately about he's so outraged about this Boston bombing stuff,
Yeah.
And he posts a picture of this woman who has, she's lying there texting on her phone on the ground,
yeah.
and this woman testifies that she lost her leg. Yeah, it's just unbelievable. Now, but if they can,
they're out there. And that's why I said it's really But people get so emotional about that's crazy. But I mean, unless those pictures we're seeing that are being analyzed on the internet are photoshopped or fake, I mean, you can't help but think that way. Yeah, the woman didn't have blood on her, and then she sat down, and it looks like they put blood on. I mean, they have lots of those examples there, and it gets you so far down the rabbit hole that and that's why I prefer to stay away from that as much as I can, because
me too.
It's hard enough trying to convince people on the surface level about the Kennedy assassination or 9/11 or just from the hard evidence. So it really takes someone who's really willing to think outside the box to even go in those places. But again, young people especially, and that's one thing I found, that young people are even more drawn to things like Sandy Hook and Boston bombing and those, because they're happening in real time and during their young adulthood. And I think they're more drawn to that because the witnesses look like them, and they can relate more to why how are they acting like that. And I think most of the videos that are being produced on these events, the most that I've seen where you can see the guys, a lot of them are young, and they're doing great work, and they're it's very sophisticated, and to my mind it's persuasive. But there's a lot of things out there that we have to convince people of an awful lot of things.
But again, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because my kid, like I said before, she's 14 years old, and she sees this Illuminati symbolism, and she sees it and stuff. Now, is that are these kids being conditioned? Because obviously it's in our face way more than it was when you and me were kids, man. You look at the Super Bowl halftime, the VMA award.
Oh,
yeah,
sure,
right. So
sure.
Now, but
yeah, I understand. I think. I think knowledge is always a good thing. So I think if she's realizing it and people are realizing it, I mean, I'm glad my son is certainly aware of it. And I think in the way Alex Jones and other people describe it as being awake, and I think that's a real good way to describe it. So I think being awake is a good thing. Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, okay.
To see all the symbolism and stuff, but maybe it. But I don't know. The one thing I find about this is it's never boring. I mean, it is like living in a science fiction movie a lot of times. It's really interesting, and if you weren't having to go through it, it would be real interesting to read the book or watch the movie or whatever. But it's I think it's a good thing. That knowledge is always a good thing, and it's, if they know what they're up against, it's you can put your head in the sand and hope to keep them away from it. But I think more and more they're going to be exposed to it, especially like I said, if they're aware of it to any degree at all. If they see a Super Bowl halftime show or things like that, they're gonna recognize that. Hey, wait a minute, that's why is she doing that? Why are they doing that? And that it's I think it's good to raise awareness, and maybe that's the way change will eventually come. Is that enough eyes will be open, and then people, the next step will be, okay, why is that symbolism there? What is the purpose of that? What does that have to do with the song?
Well, how much do you think the thread throughout all this is sort of like Satanism or some kind of demonic worship and that evil kind of thing, that thread through it? Do you see that?
Yeah. Well, somebody else asked me that, but I certainly see that there, a lot of this behavior, certainly seems to be. I mean, one of the things that I'm fascinated by too. I'll look at the internet sometimes. I'm sure you've seen it. Is all the celebrities given the devil sign. That's supposedly the hook 'em horns for Texas football. But I don't think Queen Elizabeth and Paul McCartney and them are Texas football fans. Yeah. But it's amazing to see all the people that give this. I mean, I've never knowingly given that sign with my hands ever.
No, me neither. You mentioned
it's not a natural way to do it, but you so are they doing that because they're all closet Satanists? I don't know. Maybe this is all. Maybe that's what drives them. I mean, that's one of the big questions that Winston Smith asked in Orwell's 1984. He said, "I know who, and all. I know how, but I don't know why." And that's the thing, is why. Why are they doing it? But if they're compelled by some kind of loyalty to Satan or Lucifer or whatever, then that may explain it. But certainly those hand symbols that you see are, in fact, one of them is an old guy that shows up in one of the Sandy Hook pictures behind one of the teachers. You've probably seen there was a guy in the background where it's a picture of the real attractive girl that was killed, and the guy's just in the background giving the devil salute. And it's like, what?
For no reason.
I've had a lot of family pictures. I've never had anybody doing that in the background.
Yeah, unless they do it behind your head, as those little rabbit ears kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. They do something like that. They do the rabbit ears, the peace sign, that kind of thing. But they wouldn't do that. It's like, that's pretty weird.
And what do you think about this theory about how people say that, in order for the Illuminati or the whatever these things, to get away with this stuff, they have to tell us about it first. Now, are you familiar with that theory?
Well, yeah, I guess that's kind of akin to a vampire. You have to ask your permission before he enters your house or something.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that's probably maybe that's myth like that, but I mean I don't know. Maybe they're real polite.
Okay.
I don't know, but it does. You really have to wonder a lot of times about what their thought pattern is on a lot of these things. I mean, all we can really do is look at what they do, and I mean, really, if you look at my book, I mean, they're the way they operate is pretty much the same all the time. I mean, it's the same pattern. Cover up, withhold evidence, destroy evidence, invoke national security,
right.
Smear anybody who questions it. That kind of thing. And that's it's every time. It's not there's not a single case where they don't act that way.
But my question is, if that is a fact that they need to reveal what they're doing to us first, and we sort of give them complacent permission, what do you think about what you and I are doing right now by exposing this stuff and telling people about it? Are we playing into that whole scheme, or?
Well, that's one thing I've read a little bit about it in the book I see it in other cases too. In the JFK assassination, Vincent Salandria was one of the early critics, and I had always kind of thought this, and then I started reading some of his stuff that, because one thing always amazed me is how transparent the cover-up was.
Right.
It's like they wanted you to discuss, and I really do think this is a game they play where, like for instance, the magic bullet in the Kennedy assassination. Why would you plant that bullet that looked like it hadn't hit anything? You'd plant a bullet that looked like it had struck something.
Right.
But they didn't. They planted a bullet. It's the same thing with the 9/11. The hijacker's missing passport. you would something that ridiculous where you have it appear on top of the rubble where everything was, blown to smithereens and turned to dust, but somehow the passport survives and you put it, right there neatly on top of the rubble. Something that outrageous that instantly, oh wow, that's impossible. And that, you're right. I think that for whatever reason, they enjoy the show. They enjoy the controversy. Maybe they like laughing at people like us. Maybe they listen to these shows and they get their jollies that way. I can't understand what motivates them at all. Like I said, I can't think. People have asked me before. I said, I'm not one of the conspirators. I have no idea why they're doing what they're doing and why they do it the way they do it. I mean, if I was involved with them, I think I could construct a lot better cover-ups for them, write better scripts or whatever. Some of them are just, ridiculous because they're so transparent and they're so easily disprovable. That's why these kids on the internet, they're able to deconstruct these events, almost in real time as soon as they happen. It's amazing.
Yeah, but is that amazing? Can we trust these kids on the internet if they're deciphering this stuff on instantly, right? And
right.
Following down a little rabbit trail, okay? Because they're the most gullible among us, Right. Shouldn't we be concerned about the information that they're presenting to us?
Oh, and that's where you get into what we talked about earlier, where who's a disinfo, who's a troll, and that's. A lot of people feel that way about Alex Jones. I love him, but a lot of people feel that way about him, and mostly a really high David Icke's another one. And a lot of people feel that way about, especially the real successful people. Well, they must be, they wouldn't allow them to live, or they,
right.
They must be, they're feeding us something the way they want us to think, and maybe they are. But I mean, I can think for myself and look at the things that happen, and I'm certainly, I don't think there's any way to distort the way, our personal freedoms and civil liberties have been eroded. I don't think there's a way to look at that other than what, obviously has happened.
Now, what about people who say that 9/11 had to be planned? If not, 30, 40, 50 years ago, but some people even think hundreds of years ago. What do you think of those theories? Are you familiar with William Ramsey and his book about 9/11?
Yeah, I've seen the symbolism the Simpsons had, and and all that. You could see that they again, that's when you really go down the rabbit hole, and then you're throwing in, okay, how did the people that are making the Simpsons know? I mean, I think that may be something that's just thrown out there to try to discredit people. I mean, I'm not saying nothing. Just having studied all this stuff for as long as I have, I hesitate to say anything's impossible, but I think I think certainly 9/11 was not thought up on the spur of the moment.
Right.
I mean, I think they did. I mean, certainly that was that national that booklet they wrote about the Dick Cheney and a bunch of them were neocons were involved with. What they said the Project for a New American Century, I think it said something on the order of a new Pearl Harbor has to happen, and this was like I don't know a year or less before 9/11, and for the people to understand and take the threat of terrorism seriously. And so they needed that, much as FDR needed Pearl Harbor to get us into World War II. I mean, these are things that go back at least to there. I mean, I started my book with the Kennedy assassination just to make it more simple, and to go more with my lifeline. But you can certainly go back much farther in history and see that this kind of behavior has always been, standard for the people that rule us.
Well, you go back to Dave McGowan. He did some work on the Lincoln assassination.
Oh, God, that was. I emailed him. I'd love to meet. I email him once in a while. That was best stuff. I've studied the Lincoln assassination a lot too. Yeah. And what he was doing there, he was basically doing a Boston bombing Sandy Hook thing where he was analyzing it. Why are the pictures this way? Why was Louis Payne? Why did he look like a movie star? Why were the quality of the pictures? And he was analyzing, and he really made you think. I mean, I don't. It's so far down the rabbit hole, you don't know what to think. But he's raising valid points, and he got me. I thought I knew it all about the Lincoln assassination, but he really got me to think a different way about some of this stuff.
Well, next time he comes on the show, call in, man. He's on the show all the time.
I know. I was on Maria Heller a while back, and I know she has him on all the time.
Yeah.
He's certainly he's a really interesting guy.
Yeah, and if you notice too, man, he's not in for this gun grab theory either, man. We're tuned in. I'm tuned in with him on that one. I don't believe this gun grab theory, man. I think if they want us to stop having guns, they'd stop making guns tonight.
Yeah. He's really he's tuned in. He's really extreme in his thing. Yeah, and he is. Yeah, he's writing about more esoteric thoughts, and like I said, it's hard to argue with him. Yeah, I go with you there.
No, he's doing his work. That's for sure. I talk about him all the time. Oh boy. Now what about something? This might sound a little crazy, but something like we elect a president named Obama, and it rhymes with Osama bin Laden. Can that be coincidence?
His middle name is Hussein.
Yeah, is that coincidence, or is that thrown in our face?
Yeah.
And when you look at what do you think of Obama? Because now, wait a second, let's get into this. Because now you're saying you like Alex Jones, right? Now Alex Jones is out there talking about that Obama's a Muslim and he's a Kenyan and all that kind of stuff. What do you think of that?
Well, he's killed an awful lot of Muslims for somebody that's a Muslim. But I think that's the left-right paradigm where the criticism of Obama is directed in the wrong direction. Where they stress Hussein is his middle name and they try to portray him as a Muslim when in reality he's killed more Muslims than any other president, and he's hardly been. But there's enough of it there where he says enough things where I can see that they grasp that as a talking point or something, but. No, I don't think. I don't think that, and I don't know if that's a lot of the neocons and their devotion to Israel that are throwing the Muslim smokescreen out there. But I mean, I just look at Obama as someone that has. I mean, I go over a little bit in my book about his history or a lack of a history. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there where there's not much of a track record, where nobody seems to remember him much, and that Andrew Breitbart, was going to blow the whistle on him, and then he drops dead. And the video that they put out is like this innocuous thing of him talking at Harvard, and it was. I don't know if you saw that video, but you talk about going down the rabbit hole. But the video that came out, I've never seen a video like that. Obama was the speaker, and the camera was virtually never on him. It just kept panning the crowd, and I thought, I've never seen this where a speech is filmed, but the speaker is, it was only on him very briefly, and I thought, that is really weird. And again, I don't know what it means, but we do know that, there was a big history professor at Harvard that came out with that statement that every major politician of substance has come through Harvard. It took my class, and I remembered him well. I don't remember Barack Obama didn't take my class. In fact, I can't find anybody that remembers him. So, what does that mean? I don't know. You're down the rabbit hole again, but his past is littered with those kind of things, and so ironically, I said, he gave me the title of my next book. Hopefully, you didn't build that, he says a lot of the stuff I can relate to. He talks a good game a lot. As much as conversely for a right winger, Reagan used to talk a good game. But as I think I exposed in this book, is that Reagan's rhetoric never lived up to what he did, and neither does Obama's. I mean, these guys all end up kind of doing the same thing. I mean, what you can count on, all of them, is more globalism, more foreign adventurism, more so-called free trade, more state control, more infringement on civil liberties, and more calls to sacrifice. They're always great. We need to sacrifice, equal sacrifice, which means everybody but the top 20%, especially the 1%. The 80%, you guys keep sacrificing. When unfortunately, there's just nothing left to get. It's got getting blood out of a turnip. There's just nothing there, and I don't know when they're going to realize that.
Yeah, so interesting. You got Reagan, who was married to a communist, Nancy Reagan, Nancy Davis. They never found the other Nancy Davis, so we know she was she was a commie. Okay, homosexuals abound. He had in his White House. Also, too, had the whole the horoscopes and all that stuff. Guys. Yeah, they ran. She was. She basically ran the personal astrologer for him, and he was. And actually raised taxes.
I have a lot about this, so-called family man, first divorced president, estranged from all his children, never went to church. Was a so-called big government slasher, and he couldn't even eliminate the Department of Energy, which had just been created by Carter. He didn't eliminate a single agency in his entire time he was there, and we had the Grace Commission, which was done at that time, which was one of the few valuable commissions that's ever been established by the powers that be, and they documented how just by cutting waste that they could cut 1/3 of, I think it was 1/3 of spending and taxes. And what happened? Reagan, nobody even took. They just took the report and filed it away. I mean, and that was then. I can't imagine that we've become less wasteful since then. So that's the kind of thing where they had. If he was really interested in cutting the size of government and the bureaucracy, he would have done that. He did. He didn't do that. And unfortunately, Reagan's looks worse in retrospect all the time. I mean, he closed the barn door on immigration with the amnesty of 1986. And then the act he passed, I can't remember the exact name of the act that passed. I mean, I'm saying him. He had nothing to do with the figurehead. But during his administration, the act that passed to allow police to confiscate all property. I can't remember the name of it, but they use that now to confiscate cars. And
I know what you're talking about.
They extend. So if you were a drug dealer, they basically can take anything that theoretically came from your illicit profits. And it's a very, very dangerous thing because it's obviously been abused a lot. And then, of course, Mr. Tax Cutter, his tax reform, what it did is it just killed the working class and the poor because it all he did with his Tax Reform Act is he got rid of the deductions for interest on anything but mortgages. He didn't want to keep the mortgage, but I guess pressure from the real estate industry caused him to keep that. But other than that, like, your credit cards and your, who, again, working class is more prone to be overtaxed with credit cards and auto loans and anything like that. Any other kind of personal loans you couldn't write anymore, and your medical expenses couldn't be written off the way they were before. So it really, everything he did impacted the poor and the working class. But because a lot of people got rich during his administration, and it became in to start wearing a suit and tie again, and
yeah, right. I
Wall
did too. Yeah, I was in New York in those days. I wore a suit and tie every day. Now, but let me ask you a question now. Now, where do your politics lie then?
Well, everybody asks me that. I mean, I'm basically a populist. I mean, maybe a populist libertarian hybrid. I mean, I believe my hero is Huey Long. My political hero is Huey Long, and I believe that power corrupts. Especially whether it's big power, concentrations of power in government and business, both. I don't like. So I don't like bigness anywhere. So I mean, I'm also somewhat of an 18th century, Thomas Jefferson type of liberal. That kind of liberal, or Charles Dickens liberal. Where I believe in reform. I believe in the state trying to do good things, but I also recognize that the state can't have too much power. So I think what we have today is the antithesis of everything I believe, because we have this huge gargantuan government that is intrusive in all areas of our lives, but is cutting what little benefits they gave before, chipping away at them. Well, I mean, we're taxed at a rate that we should have a super wonderful socialist cradle of the grave government that free health care and mass transportation and great roads and bridges. We should see all this, but we don't. We see dilapidated roads and bridges. We have probably the worst healthcare system, certainly of any alleged first world country, and we're taxed at a rate that would indicate that. So we have the worst of both worlds. So I don't go for the left and right paradigm. I look at each issue individually, but I believe that. I believe in civil liberties, and I don't think there are too many civil libertarians left anymore. I think the Constitution, especially the Bill of Rights, is a timeless piece of legislation, and it should be sacred to our leaders, and it's not. And so if that can tell you what I am, I mean, I address issues, but I'm against corruption. I would be a whistleblower if I had to be, and I think that's so. Pretty much everything I'm saying I am is going against the grain of what we see nowadays. Because we see animosity directed towards whistleblowers, and people seem to want big government in the wrong places, but not in the right places. They're okay with foreign aid, but they're concerned about welfare queens. Making $50 a month extra for a kid, that kind of thing. They don't look at Walmart, with all the corporate welfare that goes to places like that. Somehow they're more excited about their neighbor. I mean, why is he buying that with food stamps? And that's the thinking I encounter all the time. That's where they're at, and that's what the conservatives appeal to, and the liberals appeal to nothing but political correctness. You know, they're authoritarian, and they want to get you fired for what you said. Oh, you said that, I want to fire you and destroy you. I mean, that's their mindset. That's the choice we have, not much of a choice.
I hear you, man. I hear you. You know, it's amazing. The biggest trick that the billionaires ever came up with is tricking us into thinking that the poor have all our money. You know, you know how they pull that one out.
Just get them to pay their fair share.
You know? They don't even. They're not even paying 10%, man. And, well, no. Those welfare people have your money. The poor have our money.
It's unbelievable, those poor struggling.
It's amazing. But I know, it's just amazing. But no, what I was going to ask you, though, what do you think of this Jade Helm, Walmart's tunnels under Walmart's? What do you think about that?
Well, you know, it's the latest thing, but it's part of a trend. I mean, I'm all the conspiracy forums are thinking that Walmarts are closing and they're going to turn into FEMA camps, and you run into that all the time. I mean, it's certainly, and again, I think that may be some of the smokescreen we talked about. I think they like putting these things out there so people believe that, oh, okay, they're gonna do it now, you know, and they never quite do it. And you know, like you have the Denver airport thing with all the indications that there's you know, something underground there, and the disastrous paintings that certainly appear inappropriate to have in an airport. You know, of these air tragedies happening. I mean, who would think of putting that up at an airport? But these things are there. I think Jesse Ventura covered it on his show, and so again, what does it mean? I mean, I'm sure there'll be something else next month, probably. But I mean, I think they're also on these conspiracy forums always talking about an asteroid's going to hit, or
You know,
a lot of these people are doomsters, I call them. You know, where they. I think they get excited and they want something like that to happen. They're not quite cognizant of what would happen if an asteroid did hit, I guess, but they're or you know, they want, and a lot of people too that are like us that understand how corrupt everything is. They probably recognize that maybe our only hope of ever, after a long time, of getting back to something honest would be for it to collapse, for it to be a Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome type of world. So a lot of people, I think, want that to happen, and that's why, you know, they think, okay, you know, they're going to start rounding this up and everything's going to collapse, and they're hopeful of that.
Okay, man. So now, if you were running things, or if I were running things, wouldn't I keep telling people, hey, this is going to happen. And as soon as that happens, you can all rise up and fight back against me. As soon as the asteroid hits, as soon as the the FEMA camps come. When meanwhile, we need to realize that right now, the situation that the conditions that we live under right this minute are intolerable, and we should be resisting right this second. Not waiting for Walmart tunnels, not waiting for asteroids. We got to resist right now.
I agree. I mean, I agree with you, and everything you said is right. But I think it gets back to what it means to most people to resist. Is that, you know, that they're basically, unless they have numbers with them, and I think that's what everybody's scared of. Is that, you know, and that includes me.
Okay.
You know, if you don't have a lot of people, are you willing to go to jail? Are you willing to, you know, to be charged? You know, I mean, certainly if you're a private investigator and you've worked on these cases, you know how they can trump things up and railroad you through the courts. I mean, any citizen that is aware of things wants to stay away from the police, wants to stay away from the courts. I mean, they want to stay as far away from our legal system as they can. But so that's the problem. Is that, you know, I think all of us, man, if we could really, and then if you do, like, say you try to start your own movement, you know, to try to, you know, get something done. Well, then you know you're going to have undercover agents and informants in there, and you're not going to know who they're going to be. So it's a sticky situation. I think really the only way that you know, it's terrible to say that possible change will come, and I don't even know if that will be possible, is if things do collapse. Because I think if the economy no longer becomes viable and the money of if their money no longer means anything, then, you know, people are actually, no matter how lethargic they are, if they have to go out and they don't have food anymore, at least a certain number of them are going to start going out and foraging, and, you know, it's going to be uncontrollable. And the military, certainly, I think, you know, that's what they know too, that a certain number of, probably, I would think the majority of the military would turn in that situation. That's why we always hear about these, you know, reports that the military was asked would they shoot on American citizens and stuff. I think they're, and all the ridiculous practice and drills and stuff they have of practicing for something. These troops are practicing for something. What are they anticipating? And so it's.
See, man, that's why I know that collapse will never happen, because that's the only thing that will cause people to get off their butts and do something. And then they'll never allow that. They'll never allow that. They can give us food stamps and stuff like that forever, and we'll be happy, fat, dumb, and sloppy, and all this kind of stuff. The kind of people go ahead.
I think you're right. In a way, I agree with you, but I really think that the problem is the consolidation of wealth has gotten so great now that I don't know how longer they can prop it up, because unless they're going to, that's the other thing they throw out all the time, is that all the little statements about wanting to kill millions of people and stuff. They want people to die off, and the population control thing, where unless really millions do die off from something, either you have to face this, in America especially, for whatever reason, all those journalists that are reporting this stuff, they, in their naive way, I really think they're so removed from it, at least most of them, that they actually think, this is good, and because it's working so well for them.
Yeah.
So they would have to, if they had to deal suddenly with all the people that are, because, at the same time all this is going on, you have the Republicans wanting to slash benefits and stuff, and the Democrats, fighting back in their little pathetic way. But so if you keep slashing benefits and you don't have jobs, and you're going to introduce at least 10 million more immigrants to the workforce, and that's even before the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which that gets in, God knows how many immigrants that's going to introduce in the work. They're already driving down wages to rock bottom levels in many places, and benefits are a thing of the past in a lot of cases. So I don't know how much longer they can prop it up unless they're willing to stop acting like, we are what we aren't anymore, and just admit, okay, we're turning into a third world country. And because that's what you're going to get. That's the only way you're going to get. You're going to get a third world country, and you're going to have incredible wealth at the top, and the middle class has been eroded and eroded. It's shrinking by the hour as we talk, and you're not going to have any middle class left soon. And unless they're willing to admit that, that's what I say. I don't know if will there be something dramatic, like you wake up tomorrow and there's literal collapse, or animals are running wild through the streets and stuff. I don't know if it's going to be quite that dramatic, but I really don't see how they can, because I think they're so greedy and they're so short-sighted that all they're looking at is, okay, I got to take all I can while I can. And there's not a single statesman out there that's thinking of the future. You know
what, though, man? As long as they're fat, dumb, and happy right now, okay, and they should be so happy with we're just obedient little slaves going through our little. We go to work every day, just barely to pay for the gas to get back and forth to work, okay, and pay our rent. That's what the majority of people are right now. Okay, so now all they got to do is build more jails. They build some more jails, and they build some more prisons. They create some demonstrations out in the street. They give those people a little arrest, and then the DUI arrest and the domestic violence arrest, and they build up the little probation. Everybody's on probation. Everybody's on parole. Everybody's has court appearances coming up.
That's probably the only thing. The alternative would be if they built. They're already. How many? Are you going to end up putting 3/4 of Americans in jail? I just don't think there's that many criminals in there. But if they keep doing it and they have the private prisons and stuff that have quota systems, you have to have a certain no vacancy rate, or the taxpayers pay for it. These things are incredible that are happening out there that people don't know about. So if they did that, you could eventually imprison 3/4 of the population, and you could probably have a viable economy with a quarter of the people. But
the way they got it right now, it's $20-$30 a phone call to call out of jail. To make a phone call to your family. The families are paying for it.
If they do something like that, maybe they can do that. I don't know. I guess I'm actually hoping for some kind of a collapse.
I'm hoping too, man.
It's sad to say, but that's probably the only hope we have, and it would be terrible to go through that. But otherwise, I think, like you said, I think your scenario will come true. It'll just keep going the way it's going and getting worse, and maybe they will lock everyone up and just come up with. Every time they pass a law, they create more criminals. It's
right.
Something people don't realize, and that's our response on the public, whether it's guns or anything else. Do something, and do something means pass a law. And I tell people, every time you pass a law, you're creating more people that are now considered criminals that weren't before. When they made marijuana and heroin and cocaine illegal in like the 1930s, suddenly these were all criminals that weren't considered criminals before, and that's the kind of stuff that we the fact that we can still have this ridiculous drug war, which again,
what do you think of all this marijuana legalization? What do you think of that? I'm not too.
Well, I mean, I think that it should all be decriminalized. I mean, I think you should go back to the way it was in the 1930s, and no one went to prison for anything like that, and it should be a single standard again, because you already have the wealthy and the people that are athletes or entertainers. They're caught with drugs and they're not treated the same way. I mean, they're like you said, they go to rehab. They need help. We need to help them get their lives back in order. Right. But a poor person is caught. Oh man, we need to throw him away, lock him up and throw away the key, and 3 strikes you're out, and all these horrible minimum mandatory sentence laws, and all these incredible.
So many cases I see. When I'm in court, so many cases I see. Someone was in a car with some paraphernalia. They all got a ticket. They couldn't do their classes. They couldn't pay their fines. It built up. Now they're facing 2-3 years. A year later, their father was paying their bills, died. And now they're you're done. But the thing is, why did they wait to legalize marijuana after it got so freaking powerful that it zombifies you? It's like a LSD trip right now. From I smoked pot when I was a kid. It's 100 times more powerful than it was back then. They wait till now to legalize it?
Yeah, well, I have no experience with marijuana
for
a long, long time either. But
call me after the show.
Yeah, I understand. I'm sure it's that way, and there may be some of that in there where I'm aware of that argument. Okay, well, that'll make it easier, but. I mean, if they're smoking it anyhow, again, I just think you need to get away from locking people up for it, because that would go a long way towards. But and again, I think that's probably why they don't want to legalize it, because that takes away a large part of their potential prison population. Right. If you do that, because I don't know what the percentage is in prison that are there for drug crimes, but it's got to be a pretty high percentage, I would think.
Oh, it's huge. Because it just all builds up, You can't pay your fines, you can't take your classes. It just builds up, man. You get in there. Now, did you ever look into all the drug dealing of the Bushes and the Clintons and all that kind of stuff?
Oh yeah, I have the Gary Webb case there. Certainly that's the most famous one where he shot himself twice in the head. Eventually, but he certainly I can prove conclusively that the CIA and the government was involved in getting crack cocaine into the inner cities, and you don't see Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson talking about that,
right.
And that was a huge thing, and there's lots of indications that our government is involved with smuggling drugs in, but it's something again they're not going to admit, because they've counseled so they just say no and all that. It's something they're just it's like someone. As long as he can, he's not going to admit he's a child molester. I mean, they're just not going to. They're not going to admit something that heinous. So, and I think that's the problem. That's why Gary Webb paid that price, because he was. I have a long quote from him in the book, where he was saying he won prizes and stuff, and he said, "Hey, I thought I was doing a great job." He said, "No, I wasn't doing anything. I just had never come up against anything as powerful enough. Then I found out how things really work." And unfortunately, he found out and paid with his price. But it's drugs are just obviously just part of the problem. But and in one sense, I guess you can argue, well, they'd like to keep people on drugs, but I don't know that they need to. I know lots and lots of people out there, and hear lots of people on on television, and that they're not on anything. Maybe pharmaceuticals, which is another issue, but. And they're just they're zombies without any kind of drug. So they're not capable of independent thought, and you try to reason with them, and there's nobody home. It's really frustrating when you get that. They won't reason. They just won't.
I hear you, man. It just we have coming up. Freeway Ricky Ross is coming on the show. Okay.
There you go. That's a good guest.
Wait, but you want to know what else? I mentioned during the intro that our show is played on Firehorse Radio. I think it's on Wednesday nights. That station is owned by Gene Chip Tatum, the CIA agent who was smuggling drugs.
Oh, yeah.
That's his station, man. Yeah. And he plays us, and he talks about delivering a bag of Coke to Clinton.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, you read that, what was the book by Terry Reid, years ago that talked about Clinton and Oliver North, and being basically together on the drug trade in Arkansas. Later they would play the roles of these, dire enemies, and that's the kind of stuff that in all politics you see, where they're are they all play acting? You know, are they really? You know, does any? When you look at Bush and Clinton now, they go to the old Bush and actually a young Bush too. I mean, they look like the best of friends. They run out the old Bush and Clinton do these tours together and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, these sworn political entities. I mean, at the top, they just, you know, that's why they all belong. They all go to Bohemian Grove. They're all in Bilderberg. You know, they're all CFR. They're all in the same groups, and they all, you know, they just disagree on things like, you know, prayer in school or abortion or gay marriage. I mean, those are the issues that are really not going to impact the majority of lives the way, you know, these economic issues do, and these issues of trade and the globalism and things like that. Those are the important issues, and that's why when you have a campaign, it's always about those other issues. That's what the media covers. They don't. There's, you know, we have what was called a bipartisan foreign policy, and people just come to accept that. Well, that means there's no disagreement on foreign policy. I mean, there hasn't been really a disagreement on foreign policy since 1968. I
agree with
you. You know, when they killed Bobby Kennedy, and so you know, it's like I don't know how you could have a, you know, a so-called choice when the candidates agree on every significant issue.
When there's not one voice anywhere talking in the media saying, let's nationalize the oil industry. Nobody, no. Hey, you know, we need to do something about that, you know, and have gas prices like Venezuela has.
They're not any voices. I mean, look, even somebody like Elizabeth Warren, who says a lot of the right things sometimes. Well, you know, she voted not to audit the Federal Reserve. I mean,
Bernie Sanders, yeah.
That should be a no-brainer. For how do you possibly defend not auditing the Federal Reserve? But she came up with a convoluted pro-banker type reason, and she's supposed to be against Wall Street and the bankers, and that's the so-called best we have out there, supposedly.
Well, she doesn't want to get shot. Listen, we got 1 minute left, man. Tell us where we can find you. Get your book. Tell us about yourself.
Okay. Well, again, my book is Hidden History, an expose of modern crimes, conspiracies, and cover-ups in American politics. You find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Skyhorse Publishing. My blog is out there in WordPress, Keeping It Unreal. I also have a novel, The Unreals, which has a lot of these same elements in it if you're interested in reading it. Again, you can Google me, and I'm out on the JFK forums. I'm still pretty active out there, trying to keep my name out there, and I've been on several other shows. Hope to be on some more shows in the future, talking about these issues, and just urge everyone to try to stay aware and be aware of the corruption that's out there, and just try to, at least not believe everything you're being told.
Thank you so much, Donald Jeffries, Hidden History, an expose of modern crimes, conspiracies, and cover-ups. Thank you so much, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for having me.
Good night, man.
Good night. Thank you.
Whew. Hey, real quick, Donald. Oh. Say good night to Donald. All right, guys. Good night, everybody. Opera report's over. No calls tonight. It has 702-605-4894. Not one single call all night long. Sat here all by myself. And I had it all rigged up, too, that we could go longer. So, don't forget, guys, about the new membership section. Got a lot of big shows coming up in the membership section. And it really helps when you support that. It helps support the free shows on Friday nights and the free shows that I do during the week, as well as bring in these extra shows to the membership section. Okay, so we really need your help with that. Thank God, we're getting through a lot of humps that we're getting over with my personal life and the litigation, all that kind of stuff like that. Got a little plan coming up where I think I'm going to talk it over with Vic to see how embarrassed it would be. By the way, Vic has my daughter Victoria has a a debate tomorrow over at Coral Academy of Science, like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. If you want to come down, give me a shout out on Facebook, and I'll get you in there. You can watch the debate. It's about GMOs and Monsanto, all that kind of stuff. But one thing I think I'm going to be doing is exposing. A lot of you guys know about the issue we had with the therapist that was court-ordered and all this kind of stuff like that. This court-ordered therapist recommended this other therapist. And we have recordings of this guy abusing my daughter, cursing at her, insulting her. And it's criminal behavior, okay? And I think what we're going to be doing is we're going to be playing that on the air. The excerpts of this guy telling my kid to pick up your goddamn stuff and get the F out of this office. And you're just a lazy, selfish, self-centered Vegas kid. And all this insults that this piece of crap was hurling on my daughter. He needs to be exposed for the stuff he's done. And I'm going to need your support on that as well. We made another complaint about a therapist against my kid, and we got nowhere with it. But I think this one here, when we get this and it goes viral, and it gets out there on in the media, I think we might see some action on this one here, okay? Because when you listen to this, you're going to feel miserable and uncomfortable, and it's going to hurt your soul. And just imagine my little 13-year-old girl in this office with this prick, okay, while he's insulting my kid and threatening my kid, and her mother's sitting out in the waiting room there and can hear her through the walls because he's screaming at the top of his lungs. So I think we're going to be working on that in the future here. In the meantime, if you want to help out, don't forget you can go to GoFundMe and Google Help Save My Family by Ed Opperman, because we got this new litigation coming up here. The next court case is coming up in court date is in June 30th, around the end of June. So I need to file some motions there. So if you want to help us out, we really appreciate it. We need your support. That's for sure. Let's see. I got Vicky hit me up here. Let's see if she wants to call in. Okay, I'll pull her in here. Maybe we can talk a little bit. See what my kid has to say. She's got a big event coming up tomorrow with her debate about Monsanto. Maybe she wants to share some comments on that. Pull her in. Oops, is that the wrong one? Let's try. So tomorrow she has a debate about Monsanto and GMOs and all that kind of stuff at Coral Academy of Science. It's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
The person whom you're trying to reach is currently unavailable. Please leave a message after the beep.
I couldn't get her there. Let's try this other one. She has two, like all kids these days, they have all these different accounts. They can't just have one account.
The person whom you're trying to reach is...
Well, I don't think she might be coming on. She said, sure, 1 second, so she'll be coming on. So those are the big things we're working on. Got some big guests coming up, really, really big guests. There's stuff I'm working on that I can't talk about because what happens is I mentioned a guest, and it seems like some saboteurs out there contact these guests and try and sabotage them from coming on the show, or all kinds of trouble goes on. You have no idea what we're going through. I was trying to explain to Donald Jeffries tonight about, how most of my guests are recently out of prison, and stuff like that. Like, I wanted to tell him about the Lorenzo Cambawa, Irvin, who's one of the original Black Panther members down in Memphis, Tennessee, and had to hijack a plane to Cuba, and didn't get his. Then they threw him in prison for 2 life sentences. He's out now, but he has he's still resisting stuff like that, still organizing. But he says, listen, we have to gum up the works, we have to gum up the system, and put our bodies in the gears of the system and stop and slow it down. And that's how we need to resist. And, this idea of keeping waiting around for something to happen. We're going to wait for this knock on the door. FEMA camp, I'm coming here to take away your guns. It's never going to happen. They're happy. We're nice little obedient slaves. They're very happy with what they have right now. They have no reason to stir the pot and put any kind of stop to that whatsoever. We're great slaves.
The person whom you're trying to reach.
So they love that altogether there, man. And they don't want to change anything. And this business about waiting for something to happen, for some asteroid to hit or some crazy nonsense like that. We need to stop waiting and start doing. Okay, that's what we need to start doing. And the thing is, too, is all these people who say that they're waiting for something to happen. Okay, if they're waiting for something to happen, okay, now if they believe this hogwash about Jade Helm and about Walmart tunnels and all that kind of crap, then why aren't you doing something right now? You're not doing anything. You're a bunch of fantasy land people. It's doomsday cult fantasy land. That's what it is, So let's see you do something. And by the way, you might remember that I've done some shows with Walmart, so I'm in touch with the Walmart unions, and the guy who wrote the book about Walmart, and people that work at Walmart. I'm in touch with these people. There's nothing going on with this Jade Helm Walmart stuff, man. It's nonsense. There's nothing going on there at all. It's a bunch of crap. Again, to tickle your little fancy, to tickle you under the chin there with a feather, while you chase your next conspiracy and your theory and your next fantasy, and running around in circles. And they're going to take away our guns. I want to resist. You're going to do it. Let's see you do it. I'm waiting for it. Okay, well, my little kid's not calling in. I don't know what's going on. Can't stay here all night long. Got stuff to do. I got work to do. All kinds of wonderful stuff we're working on. We got that FBI agent who investigated the anthrax case. He's suing the FBI right now. He's a real whistleblower. This is real information. This is real facts. This is real people involved in the case. This is what we're bringing to you. Some reality. Okay, we got some stuff going on about the Oklahoma City bombing. We'll be talking about that. The Marilyn Monroe case. We have that coming up. Also, too, about these, I have two guests coming on. One about Obama's CIA background, okay, which is so overlooked. Everyone says, oh, he's a socialist, he's a Muslim, oh, he's a king, his birth certificate. Yeah, the guy's paperwork is no good, okay? That's because he's CIA, okay? Look it up, Google Obama, the CIA agent, it'll come up all over the place. It's out there. And that's why he can't respond to this nonsense about birth certificates in Kenya because what's he going to say? Oh, no. Yeah, of course my paperwork's no good because I'm working for the CIA. And so did my mother and so did my father. Of course he can't say that. Come on, guys, wake up. So this craziness that we have out there about Obama being a socialist and being a Kenyan and being all that kind of crap. Oh, my God. The guy's got fake paperwork because he works for the CIA. He's a CIA creation. I don't think his name's Obama. They made up that name. But anyway, so we have that, and then we have all this stuff about how the CIA is training these Muslim extremists and then letting them come into this country. So that's a whole other plan, too. If you look at the Wesley Clark, Google Wesley Clark destabilized the Mideast, and you'll find all kinds of stuff like that. He's been talking about this for years, since the 90s. The plan has been the same way back since the 90s to destabilize the Mideast. To have everybody over there shooting at each other, to have all these governments in chaos, running around in circles. All this business about the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is CIA. They were created by the CIA. They were created by give me a break. Turkey's run by Muslim Brotherhood. They're one of our biggest NATO allies. This is nonsense. This is crap you hear out there. Everybody's so stupid. Okay, anyway, I'm getting a little cranky. It's 8 o'clock. I'm starving. The night's over. My kid won't call up. Tomorrow we have a big debate coming up against Monsanto and GMOs. Next week we got some big shows coming up. I'm going to try and do some shows during the week, some live shows. I'm going to want to do one about the Walmart thing, about the Walmart and Jade Helm. I got some Walmart spokesmen coming on. I want to do a show with Ramona Africa coming on, talking about Momia Abdul Jamal, who is on his deathbed. They're trying to kill him in prison right now. Got some big cases coming up with the big stories coming up with the West Memphis 3. Okay, we're covering that from every angle. You're going to be surprised at some of the stuff we're bringing out there. Some guests that have never been on, they've never talked about it before on the air. People that were expert witnesses at the trial that we are booking here for you. Okay, a lot of stuff too that I can't talk about because if I talk about it, then people get to them and they can't come on the show. This is what happens. So that's where we are. So we need your support. We need your help. Go to the GoFundMe. Help Save My Family by Ed Opperman. Go to the members section, become a member of the show. Even $7 a month, man. You become a member. That's so much help you could not believe. And if we get those, we got about 40, 50 members right now. But if we get those 100 members or the 150 members, like I said, I'll talk about everything I know about Revolution Radio, about all the frauds and hoaxes over there, all the people I've come into contact with in this alternative media that I could document. I could testify in court that are full of crap. All that stuff they claim about their history and their life and their background is nonsense. It's BS. They made it up. I can prove it. Okay, I can prove that they tried to put people on their shows that were complete hoaxes and frauds, and I showed them the evidence. I said, "Hey, look, this guy admitted to me he's a fake," and they put him on anyway. So all that kind of stuff. I have a ton of information like that. I got emails. I got all kinds of stuff I can prove to you. What's his name? Michael Hemmingson. Used to send me. He did all this kind of stuff too in the background. He did kind of investigations on fellow hosts over there at Revolution Radio, and he used to send me information, stuff like that, and I laugh about it. The stuff that he did. And there's all kinds of stuff out there, all kinds of reports, and that were run on bankruptcies, all kinds of stuff on these these hoaxsters and frauds and con men. So that's what I'd like to do for you. Okay, we're at the end of the night. Got to eat some food. Thank you all for listening tonight. I'll see you next week. God bless.